Okay, and we are recording. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm super excited to have Daniel Strongin and Falco Bonfadini, but I see Araujo, so he will correct me.
Yes, Araujo. But Araujo is it's
Araujo. I
okay.
don't speak
Oh, that's
Portuguese
great. That
yet.
yeah, that's
Thank you
great.
for
That's
that.
great.
So they are presenting today Brazilian artisan cheese, preserving tradition, embracing progress. And I believe Dan will start, right? So I'm going to just briefly introduce him and he can keep introducing himself. So Dan has contributed to the artisan and cheese industry in the US and Brazil, and he played a key role with developing the artisanal cheese niche in California. He was president of the American Cheese Society, and he has helped revitalize Wisconsin's dairy industry as well. And in Brazil, he advised the Association of Brazilian Cheesemongers of Artisan Developing Membership Ethics and was sensory coordinator of the cheese judging for the Brazilian Cheese Award. That is pretty awesome. Please welcome Dan first, and you
Uh,
will be able to share your
yes,
screen
to
right now.
share. I just want to say, first of all, I want to thank you, Carmen, very much for the contact and for giving us a chance to talk about something that we could talk all night about. So beware. I'm also really honored to have the chance to be able to help Falco with his English, interpret for him when he has trouble, because he does that for me and in Portuguese all the time. So it'll be great to get even. And then, anyways, like you said, I began, really in cheese because I was in Berkeley at Andronicus Markets and working as a chef. And we were trying to differentiate, and we found these cheeses from other states. And then the state got in touch with me and said, "Hey, we want to make these cheeses to build the prestige of California cheese." And at the time, I actually made some presentations at Cal Poly when Phil Tong and Nana Farkey were there. And I had a great time, loved the area. Um, and so then I went to Wisconsin and I worked there with the Dairy Business Innovation Center. So I have some awareness of the renaissance of artisan cheese in the United States. But I also showed up just at the right time and made the right friends, like this guy to my right on the screen, Falco, to be able to contribute to the revolution in artisan cheese that happened in Brazil. And I'll explain why I use the revolution instead of renaissance in just a minute. And this is all taking place over the last 15 years. So it's a great opportunity to hear about it while it's still fresh and new. Okay, so I'm going to start my slides. And with luck, it'll actually work. Okay, part of the screen. How's that? Is
Awesome.
everybody seeing the slide? Okay, great.
Yes.
There's a problem, just say so. I've done this a lot, so I stay calm. I don't panic. Okay, the name of our presentation is Brazilian Artisan Cheese, Preserving Tradition, Embracing Progress. And as you will see, it's kind of a perfect name. And my purpose in this presentation in the beginning, besides helping Falco later on, is to act as a bridge for the people in the United States and Europe and other countries who have not been to Brazil to understand this immense, actually very sophisticated, somewhat underdeveloped country that is in their south that really, because of the language barrier, many people don't know about. And I can do that because I moved here. So anyways, how are the Brazil and the United States linked? They're more linked than in cheese in particular than you would think, because in 1949, right? I don't know if you all know the story, but you can look it up online with Dr. D'Amico, did a study of this. In 1949, the US regulations were set for raw milk cheese, not under the demand of science, but under demand of politics, because the industry wanted the cheese regulated. Now, the FDA knew there was a difference between artisan cheese and industrial cheese, and they actually sent a troop of scientists out to study artisan cheese. They only had one problem. Because of the drift into the 40-pound block and at the time, great sales of American processed cheese, there really were not many artisan cheesemakers left. To give an example, in 1900 in California, there were 1,500 artisan cheesemakers. By I think it was 1912, there were 40. By the time I started the program in California, there were, you're not going to believe this, there were 2 cow's milk. There were more goat milk producers because they had created a revolution on their own, right? But 2. So they couldn't study. So under pressure, they had to pass the rules, and they had to pass the rules following the industrial model. And it is true, believe it or not, that making milk with pasteurized milk is more risky and more dangerous than making it with raw milk because there's not natural biology in the milk to protect it. So there have to be controls on industrial cheese and also on production in mass because there's more risks involved. Okay. But doing that, it's a shame because it caused a great deal of disruption. The fact that there were no cheesemakers to study, right? Not just in the US, but in Brazil and the rest of the world as well. Why? Because in 1950, Brazil and the rest of the world copied the United States. The United States is Rome, right? They took the same laws that had been written and put them into their language. And so the irony of it is that in Brazil, when I arrived, I was told by an official in Minas Gerais, the largest dairy state, kind of the Wisconsin of Brazil, that they did not know. No one knew how many producers there were, but it's in the range of 32,000 small producers making 8 to 25 wheels a day, right? And a lot of it, most of it is sold as fresh raw milk cheese, clandestinely, even today, unfortunately. And it's sold in the central market in Brazil every week. Tons of cheese are sold, all of which is not inspected, is clandestine, and made with raw milk. So you have a country that is very strict and has a now you don't know bureaucracy. Even Mexico is less bureaucratic than Brazil. You have a tremendous bureaucracy. But on the other hand, you have this tremendous clandestine or informal economy that takes place, which is in part due because of the fact it is not a developed country. Now, here's the other weird thing. Tons of this cheese is being eaten, raw milk, fresh cheese, and no one's getting sick. So, how do you explain that? Now, of course, probably there were some people who get sick and nobody talked about it, but really there's not, the whole city's eating it. They're not getting sick. Okay. And the conditions on some of the farms here are not ideal, but the traditional method of making cheese ensures safe cheese despite that. And that's the treasure of Brazil. So the solution is not overburdening them with industrial standards, which is cruel for a poor farmer, many of whom, just got through high school, if that. The solution is to develop, right, a standard that is adapted to raw milk cheese production in small quantities, artisan cheese production, which is what the FDA wanted to do in the first place. If only they had taken a plane and come to Brazil like I did, they would have found plenty of people to study. Through nature and time, they had evolved a way to make cheese that was safe without pasteurizing or spreadsheets and homemade starters, using homemade starters, all the things that when I left the United States, everybody was saying you couldn't do, right? It's changed, I know. So what kept them going was their love for the land. Right? If you talk to a Mineira or a person from Sao Paulo or people from the South, from Rio Grande do Sul, they are the old-fashioned farmer who knows every blade of grass on the land in which they live. And that's what kept them going. So they kept their traditional life in this informal economy without any oversight, right? And unfortunately, there was a dark side to this. And so I want to be clear. I don't support this situation. It's the way it is, but I don't think it's right. Cheese-making farms need to be certified free of tuberculosis and brucellosis. They need good manufacturing practices. They need good farm practices. What they don't need is spreadsheets and unnecessary bureaucracy. They also need a price they can survive on. And with informal clandestine markets, they cannot get that price. Many of them sell the cheese for less than what it costs them to make it in today's world. So the only route to change this is through normalization, through standards adapted to small-scale artisan cheese making, with raw milk based on science. And this movement down here has done that. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. In fact, the government has agreed with us. And it shows what happens when you get a bunch of the right people from areas of different specializations, and you have respect for the other people in the Latin manner, and you sit down and you talk together. You don't talk at each other. And my hope is that Brazil's thriving tradition and the microbiome, which has been preserved here, untouched by the Industrial Revolution, offers untapped potential for study in ways that could benefit everyone involved in cheese making around the world, because it's a rare opportunity to come and see a place where, more than just marketing, there really is terroir. So, and this is in the background, you can see a real artisan cheese factory. This one is on the top of a mountain in the Serra Caiceira. They do not have electricity. They do not have cars. They use mules to bring the cheese down, which I'll show you in a couple of slides, right? But they have is pure water because they're at the top of the mountain, and that's what makes them safe, right? The barn is right next to the house where they live. They literally walk outside their house and go to the barn and milk the cows, right? And the cheese room is between the barn and the house. So it kind of goes against industrial standards of making cheese, but somehow it works. And again, it's the type of cheese. But they use pre-industrial methods and have been now for hundreds of years. Small batches, natural starter. They use waste starter. It's an acid curd cheese, which is part of the magic as to why it survives. Because if you don't know, acid curd cheese don't get listeria, and they're very well adapted to the type of climate that they have in the mountains here in Brazil. And use raw milk and natural aging. Until recently, no one had a refrigerator age their cheeses, right? And they have true terroir, sometimes a lot of it. I worked with a cheesemaker once who told me that if I move across the street, the terroir of my cheese will change. And I said, now, how is that? You've landscaped your farm. You have no natural plants. You irrigate. You pasteurize your milk. You put it in an over-sanitized room, right? And you use a refrigerator and laboratory starter to make your cheese. Nothing wrong with that. That makes great cheeses that way. But you can't sit there, do that, and claim that you have terroir in your cheese. But in Brazil, they can. Okay. So, excuse me. Wrong way. So this is the mule train. This is real. I took this photo. I took this photo 7 years ago. Now, this isn't true of all cheesemakers in Brazil. Their mules are Toyotas nowadays and refrigerated trucks. But in this case, because there was no electricity in that region, this is the way he did it. And he brought the cheese down and he sold the cheeses. Each cheese that he made, he sold to a guy, a go-between, for 8 reais, which is about $1.35 a wheel. You begin to understand why it's difficult for them to survive in this. Okay. So the revolution here began when Dr. Celia Ferreira at the paid for a study out of her own pocket that challenged the 60-day rule. And Falco will explain more about that. Second, WhatsApp, the application, played a tremendous role in what took place here, because it was a free means of communication that even people in the country could use if they didn't have telephone lines. And a lot of people do not have electricity and telephone lines, even today in Brazil, but they have cellular. So they were able to communicate with each other, and it brought the producers together in groups, creating a grassroots movement that shaped the legal landscape over time. Okay? And this led to changes in the laws over the last few years, of which my partner in the Cheese Awards and putting on the concourse in the beginning, Michelle Carvalho, was a big player in this. There's 2 seals available for producers since about, 2 years ago, but it takes a very long time for the regulations to come into place. One is called the Salo Arch, or the Arch Seal. That is applied to all products of animal origin made artisanally. So it applies to salamis, it applies to any animal item, eggs, anything. And
honey as well.
Honey as well, because I guess a bee is an animal. And there's the artisanal seal, which has a much lower bar for bureaucracy, focuses on certifying free tuberculosis and brucellosis, and good management, good manufacturing and farm practices, right? So it's much more simplified version, and it really is almost like a dream version for an artisan producer to both be safe and be able to afford to produce. And to give you an idea, it has even grown, as Falco will talk about, to the point where they have now definitions of these cheese, legal definitions of some of these cheeses. Okay. For instance, the legal definition of Queijo Minas Artesanal, and I won't get into all the different, because there's also Queijo Artesanal from Minas. They're bureaucrats. But Queijo Minas Artesanal, which is the traditional cheese that has a kind of yellowish cover that they wash the surface all the time, and is anywhere from 17 to 24 days of maturing, which has been proven by many studies since then, but all of them paid out of pocket by the professors, that to be safe. What they do is they use raw milk from local breeds, right? Enhancing to enhance the flavor. They have regional production produced only in the designated areas that they're allowed to have this designation. They use traditional methods and manual techniques. It includes coagulation with, it says natural rennet, but that actually is in the law. But again, as it is in Brazil, it's actually not the truth. The truth is they're using laboratory rennet, because in another part of the law, it says they can't use natural rennet, but you do use natural starters, waste starters, and they call pingo. And the curd is pressed by hand. It's aged on wood, which is interesting, because when I came here, wood was illegal, but it's gone back, and Falco will talk about that. And the taste and texture varies by regions and age. Remember, Brazil is an immense country. It's a very, very large country. And so when you travel, even in the state of Minas Gerais, you can drive 2-3 hours and still be in Minas Gerais. So it's the regions do vary. And but generally, because of the type of cheese made, it's a rich, creamy, slightly acidic cheese with a firm to soft texture, right? And the flavors will vary with the weather, because they don't have refrigeration to age them all. That too is changing to some degree. Okay. So now in the states that had infrastructure, like Sao Paulo, where Falco's from, the inspectors could get to the farms. So there, it was impossible to make cheese with raw milk. Nobody has done it since 1950, unless it was done on the farm secretly and for their family. So what happened is that they too, seeing this growth in traditional cheeses, they wanted to take part. So they started innovating. They started making, first, like in the United States, with artisan cheese copying European style cheeses, but now they've matured in a very short time to making cheese that are absolutely original Brazilian cheeses. And because of the movement overall and some very careful political organizing, they're now allowed to make cheese with raw milk. So it's an example of how you can evolve despite you being faced with extreme legal obstacles, if you just will get everybody at the table to sit down and talk about it. Okay. And now I would like to pass the baton to Falco. Carmen, perhaps you want to introduce him.
Yes. Now I will introduce Falco. So Falco is a cheesemonger responsible for Galeria do Queijo. Is that correct? Or I'll try my
That's good.
Portuguese pronunciation.
It's good.
Queijo's good.
A store that he has founded and owned for 28 years. Congratulations on that.
Thank
right?
you.
And the store is a reference in Brazilian artisanal cheese. He is the former president of Comer Queijo, the Brazilian Cheesemongers Association. He's organizer of multiple competitions, World Cheese Award included, and he's a member of also Guild International de Fromager, which is also a very well-renowned um, guild and accolade. So thank you very much for joining us today. And if you have anything else to add about your bio, please feel free.
Oh, first of all, it's very good to be here. Thank you, Carmen, for the invitation. Thank you, Col Polly, for the invitation. And like Dan said before, I always helped him with his Portuguese. And now it's your turn, my friend. But
I'm at the ready.
Probably I'll get a lot of mistakes, but I'm here to show you what's happening in Brazil. And I'm talking to you about something that I really, really love. I love my profession. I love to work with cheesemakers. I love the moment we're passing through in Brazil. And it's very exciting. Before talking about Cerro cheese, I would like to briefly talking about the history. Brazil was different our neighborhoods. We are colonized by Portuguese. In 1500, I make a lot of mistake with numbers, so please, pay attention.
He meant to say 1500, which is what he said.
So 1500. And as you know, in America, we didn't have cattle. So in 1532, the first cattle that coming here were not dairy breeds. They produced very little milk, and it was just to feed the baby calves. What's the calves? Calves. And
Yeah.
And the surplus was used by the family for their own consumption. And where Brazil was growing, the clergy are arriving here, and dairy breeds more specific for milk production with the monastery. These monasteries are very important to produce cheese production around the world, and it happens also in Brazil. And we are strongly related to Portugal cheese. Our traditional cheese, we believe, comes from Serra da Estrela, the cheese, Serra da Estrela cheese. And now I'll do a big jump in time. And our population was growing very quickly in gold rush era, and particularly in a state of Minas Gerais, that's the most important for cheese producers in Brazil. It was very important in this gold era because the name of the state is Minas Gerais, who is translated to general mines. They have a lot of mines with gold. So the city is growing and increasing demands for products, including cheese. And there was a profession very important at this time who is responsible to get products from the coast to this countryside and the opposite path.
Route.
Okay. So when they come back from this city like Cerro and Ouro Preto, they are increasing because of the gold. When they come back to the coast, they carry a lot of products, including cheese. So these people was very important to preserve in preservation of traditional production, which means raw milk cheese, natural starter, maturation on ambient temperature. So in 1950, Brazilian government decided to put in new regulations on cheese, adopting practices from the US, including the rule that raw milk cheese must be aged for 60 days. It was a time with a lot of fight against wood and production and maturation. And another jump, 1980, researchers like Professor Célia Ferreira, Dennis Strongin mentioned it there, heard before, began studying this cheese and why they need to get maturated for this period, 60 days. And let me talk a little bit more about Professor Celia. Professor Celia was wasn't the only one, but it was one of the most important, certainly. And her colleagues told her many times in university, what are you doing this? These people, they don't have money to pay you. And she decided to continue the study, and she recognized how important it was for our culture. So Professor Celia is one of my idols. So she made a lot of researches, paying, like Dan said before, paying from her own pocket, some of them. And she realized that the cheeses are good to consumption just after 17 days. And why 17 days? Because she decided to take cheese in 17 days. Maybe if she got in 14, nowadays we have regions in Brazil that 14 days is what the laws exige, because we can, if you can prove that the cheese is safety, you can mature for this period. So she also proved the importance of the wood for production and maturation. Professor Celia often says that bacteria has been taken out of the comfort of wood and thrown into the coldness of stainless steel and have never got used to it. It's amazing. Professor Celia is amazing. In 2011, this cheese, specific cheese, got the first IG, geographical
indication.
Thank you, Dan. And it was very important for the region and for call attention for cheese. At this photo, I would like to show you a maturation nowadays. Of course, there are many places like Dan showed before, but we have a lots of good production, good maturation as well. And in this photo, where you can see three men, one of them carrying a piece of paper. He is the Secretary of Agriculture of Minas Gerais, and with a certification to this producer. And this producer carrying a cheese with a cheese in his hand is a producer who produces cheese with mites. I don't talk about him today because it's a very long story. And Michele Carvalho was very important because he made a huge research about it, and she discovered a brand new mite. Nobody knows this mite, and she discovered a new mite, a Brazilian mite. Oh, we have a Brazilian mite. So let me talk a little bit about canastra. Canastra is probably the most famous traditional Brazilian cheese. It's made also in Minas Gerais, and they have been producing this cheese for 200, maybe even 300 years, and even in traditional way. This cheese made with whey starter and with acid curd could survive the heat and humidity of the tropics without refrigeration. It's made with raw milk, without the benefit of laboratory starters, and at the room temperature. So laws changed, and they were claimed for pasteurization. So, like Dan said, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, clandestinity was the way to preserve the traditional production of cheese. But we have, in one hand, government passing new rules, and for other hand, the consumers asking for this cheese. This cheese never, the customers like this kind of cheese, and they never stopped to buy it and to eat this kind of cheese. Now I talk about in 2004, then 2004, the producers, correct, forming the
Yeah.
Association of Producers of Cheese from Canastra, Aprocan. It was very important. They were supported by, they had support of Sebrae. I learned with them that is like a small business administration that you have in the United States. And also they received support from credit cooperative. It was very important to them. And in 2010, the partnership and teamwork among producers and queijistas. Queijistas is the term we use for cheesemongers. Is very, very new. There is no in dictionary. People are now recognizing this term.
It's so new that you have the person who came up with this term sitting in this meeting with you, Mr. Falco, Araújo Bonfadini.
So in 2010, we have in São Paulo, I'm living in São Paulo, my store is in São Paulo, and I was working with industrial cheeses. I don't want to complain about industrial cheese because I earned some money selling industrial cheese, but when I begin to work with artisanal cheese, I really discovered what I would like work for. But at this moment, there was 2 stores in São Paulo, Mestre Queijeiro.
Falco, can you stop just for a second? Can you explain to them the difference in flavors between Cerro and Canastra and what the difference is in how they make it? Because one day they may want to try it.
Okay. So they are made pretty similar, but Canastra cheese, they put the curds into a pano. What's the name of pano? In a
like a cheesecloth.
It's a cheesecloth.
Yes.
Thank you. And they press it into cheesecloth, and it's for Canastra cheese. So in Cerro, it's a little bit different. They don't use cheesecloth. They just put the curds. So I believe they have more acidity in cheese from Cerro. It's amazing to taste it with cachaça and with coffee. Do you know cachaça? It's for caipirinha. Caipirinha, it's a distillation.
Yes.
Distillate drink.
It's known here in the States, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's because they drink it all here. There's just no. But it's something like a super rum. It's not exactly, but it's a distilled liquor that's made from sugarcane. And it's like white rum. Very, very strong. And then sometimes it's aged for a long time, and it's artisanal production as well.
That is it. So in São Paulo at this moment, we have 2 stores working with Canastra cheese, and they are doing this illegally. It wasn't possible to have this cheese here, but it was gained a lot of attention. And the teamwork that I said before, it was Bruno Cabral was the cheesemonger of Mestre Queijeiro. He tells a story that I passed through as well, and Fernando Oliveira passed through as well. When he arrived in Serra da Canastra, we're looking for a producer, he met Luciano and his wife named Helena. The name of the cheese is Luciano Helena, the name of the family, Luciano Helena. And when Bruno asked them for the price of the cheese, they said a very low price. They themselves did not know the value of the product. So Bruno Cabral said, I can pay twice this price. And I did it sometimes. Bruno did it sometimes. Fernando Oliveira did it sometimes. So at this moment, 2013, I was working with Canastra Cheese in Galeria do Queijo, my store, and a very important newspaper in São Paulo, named O Estado de São Paulo. In their gastronomy section, they choose Canastra cheese as the product of the year. And it was really a boost here. At the same time, Guilherme Ferreira, well, this producer you can see with the cheese in his hand on my right side, he was the first one to receive a silver medal in an international competition in Mondial du Fromage in France. And at this moment, a lot of things were happening at the same time because of it. Dan believes in the revolution, I believe. So you can explain later that. But we are forming, we as queijistas, we as cheesemonger, we're forming our association, Comer Queijo. Laws are changing with selo artesanal and selo arte, like Dan showed you before. And I would like to tell a story about Ivair, is this producer in using a green shirt on my side. Ivair he makes cheese with natural molds, totally natural. And it was something that happens for 100 years in Canastra. But it was not recognized by law. And Ivair is the most famous producer of this kind of cheese in Canastra. And 2013, I believe, I brought his cheese to my store in São Paulo, and it was the first time he sold cheese out of his property, of their neighborhood. And I'm talking about 2013, and just in 2024, natural blooming rind was recognized by law. And it was a big fight because they intend to force producer to use industrial molds, and producer cheesemongers, chiefs, and researchers. I said, no, you can do this. But okay, another interesting
Falco, if I may, just one thing. It actually was while this is going on, people were calling me for advice because for some reason they thought I had good sense and was a diplomatic person, which is not true. I'm really a pain in the derriere. But it was the first chance that I was really happy that I'd grown up in the 1960s, because I was able to get them copies of the Rules for Radicals, which was the organizing handbook that actually Obama used when he was working in Chicago. And they developed a way to have a revolution that was like South Africa instead of a revolution like in France, a peaceful revolution. And it was done through really getting people together, getting them to taste the cheese. They liked the cheese. And through this process of winning awards overseas. And remembering that every cheese that won an award until very recently had to be smuggled out of the country. That's the only way it could be judged. Right. So it's a lot of people taking chances, and a lot of people meant well, and a lot of people within the government who agreed with us, and then people who disagreed, but who finally gave in. So it was an exciting time. And I'd also like to add that Ivair's cheese is because of the mold, is a completely different cheese than the other cheeses in Canastra. It's more creamy, it's more crumbly. When you get it when it's really right, it's world class. In fact, I think he won a gold, didn't he?
Yes. So another interesting thing that is happening in Brazil, it's the impact in tourism of these regions. So Minas Gerais is a very important state in Brazil, and they have lots of historical cities that attracts lots of tourists. But in 2018, Serra da Canastra received more tourists than the other cities. And it wasn't because of their natural park that is great, but people realized it was because of cheese. People are visiting them because of cheese. And here you can see the new how can installation? No, the new
Installation works. Yeah.
installation, okay, of Guilherme Ferreira to receive tourists. So it's great, it's very good. There's a kitchen, lots of place to see. Then he invites important chefs from Brazil to cook in there, and it's
Chefs.
oh, sorry, chefs, chiefs and other things, chefs.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dan. So, Diamante, Santa Catarina. This is another cheese. As you are aware, there are many foods that are at risk of extinction around the world. And according to Arc of Taste of Slow Food, Diamante cheese was one of these foods. Diamante means diamond. And Diamante was from a very tiny community in a small city in the state of Santa Catarina, in southern part of Brazil. And they had very few producers. They are unable to generate enough money, enough income to sustain their activity. Because of this, younger generation were discouraged from continuing the tradition, and the cheese was nearing extinction. Now I would like to talk a little bit about Prêmio Queijo Brasil. It's Brazil Cheese Award that Dan Strongin and Michele Carvalho, they were responsible for technical and sensorial
Judging.
training of judging. And it was founded in 2014 for Bruno Cabral and Slow Food. So after this, in 2016, Daniel Strong and me, we are involved in other cheesemongers, and it was a real something really made with a lot of people and cheesemongers. But it was the only contest that accepted non-certified cheese. It was something that we fight for, because we believe the importance to receive this cheese, not to hiding them, to hidden them, but to take them to the light. So in 2017, when they entered the competition, they won a bronze medal. And I would like to share with you a story from Irene. She is a producer, and she told me that her biggest dream was to no longer have to hide her cheese under the table. What did she mean by that? At the local market, whenever an inspector came, she had to quickly hide her cheeses under the table, because the inspector wouldn't see it. This was the same cheese her grandmother and her great-grandmother had made. And it was a product that she was deeply proud of.
So the reason why it was not allowed to sell it, you said like it wasn't certified,
Yes.
but because it was raw milk, or like what was the reason behind not having that certification?
Because of the regulation. It was very restrictive. And it's something that I told this story so many times, and it's so emotional to me because it was really, really strong. And she told me this with tears in her eyes. So
was that the only cheese she was making, or
Well,
she had other
Carmen, I can
styles?
help. The problem is Brazil is a country that lives under Napoleonic law, and Napoleonic law is set up for bureaucracy. In other words, who calls the shots for what can and can't be done are the bureaucrats. Nothing against them. Some of my people in my family are bureaucrats, but the law said that unless a cheese factory is run the way an industrial cheese factory is run, which means in the laws in Brazil, there's 19 separate spreadsheets they have to fill out every day, which actually in the case of pasteurized milk can make some sense, but for a little producer that makes 5 cheeses a day was, it's patently absurd, but that's the way it was. And everyone knew it was absurd, even some of the inspectors. But the laws were there and things had to change. Plus, there was no investment in infrastructure. So there were no one to inspect, even if they changed the way to adapt to the way she makes cheese. No one could go there and inspect, so they couldn't liberate it for the market, because that's what controls things. I hope that helps make it a little bit more clear. So what Michelle did with the project, and Falco went down there to help out, is that she got them the basics of what they needed to meet the standards so they could be certified. And she got them to clean up their practices so that at one point, soon after the project started, their cheeses were actually cleaner than pasteurized milk cheeses as they were coming out. It took very little to do that because it was a program that was designed for, and the first model program designed for, small cheesemakers. Falco, have you recovered? You want to continue?
Yes, and and we went there to deliver the bronze medal, and they had a huge reception. There was the mayor, there was a ceremony in the church, there were councilors, producers, and everybody was very happy. And a producer asked me for help, and Professor Celia said to me, Falco, could you help? Could you buy this cheese to sell in your store? And I said, oh my God, I can. I couldn't help. I couldn't help. But this attention provide a significant boost to them. And Michele Carvalho is a researcher from University of Santa Catarina. I told her about her before. She was along other person. He wrote a project, and an important bank in Brazil, Banco do Brasil Foundation, is a public bank in Brazil. They decided to found the 7 dairies like that.
That's correct, yeah.
Dairies, and Diamante cheese is now legal. Irene no longer has to hide her cheeses under the table. In fact, this year, SIDASC, the Santa Catarina's inspection authority, held a big event where the highlight was Diamante cheese. It has gone from being hidden under the table to be on the table of state's health officials.
And I might add to that, SIDASC, the state health organization, Santa Catarina, is the most strict in all of Brazil. They were the hardest for us to get through and to talk to. And that one of the tactics that we used starting with this was we invited key people in the Department of Agriculture that's responsible for the certifying to be judges in the Prêmio Queijo Brasil and the cheese awards. And with that, they came into contact with the cheese. They came into people who knew things that they could talk with, they would never have a chance to meet with. And I think that had a large reason why the laws were able to change so quickly, because we brought them into the fold. And that, I would say, is a lot to do with the Brazilian character and people like Falco who are very, very, I know Latinos like to do things in groups. Let's put it that way. They like that. So This little project of the 7, I just found out yesterday that of the 7 cheese factories, only 2 of them went ahead and got the sale arch and are available to sell nationwide, but the rest of them are all in production using the facilities. And the cost of each facility for the people was less than $1,000. I mean, think about that. Less than $1,000, right? And what are we
So,
spending our money on? So anyways, Falco, excuse me.
so no, it's great. And you said something very important to us. We are fighting against the law, but never hiding the things of the authorities. We invited them to see what we're doing. We're not doing anything wrong. We just invite them to talk to us, to talk to the producers, to see what's going on. We are all at the same side of the table. We are not one against other. What they want, we also want. So all this looks like a fight, but it is a fight, but we never do anything without inform or invite inspectors to see what we are doing. So here you can see, oh, then I found this photo. I didn't show you before. Here in black, how can you say vestido?
Dress.
Oh, dress. In black.
That's really a suit, I think.
Black dress is Professor Celia.
Look how elegant she is. She is a character. Yeah.
And this other here is Michele Carvalho.
Yeah. She worked for a while in Wisconsin, Professor Celia. She was part of the dairy research back when they had that. Okay.
So I believe I have to do it more quickly then, but okay. So no.
Embracing innovation.
Okay. What? Oh, okay. Embracing innovation. São Paulo. São Paulo is the most powerful and rich state of Brazil. Here happens the opposite. Professionals such lawyers, IT specialists, architects, they left their careers and went to countryside to produce cheese.
Much like what happened in the U.S. Much like what happened in the U.S. There's a similarity there.
Okay. Go ahead. They don't have the benefits or the responsibility to produce the traditional cheese. And additionally, they have forceful inspection. So they didn't have many options other than pasteurization. They began by copying European cheese like Brie style, Gorgonzola style, and things like this. But they quickly realized that they need to develop their own recipes,
correct.
And this things was like a empurrãozinho, como que eu falo isso? Like pushing them to produce a huge variety of really well done cheeses. But their cheeses are more expensive and focusing on wealthier customers. I'm not complaining about that. I understand, but that has happened. Their cheeses are more expensive than the traditional cheese. There were some challenges, of course. Around 2 or 3 years ago, there was a crackdown by authorities in São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. Some cheesemakers were forced to close in response to the crackdown. Not only cheesemaker, through their association, APQA, Association of Cheese Producers in São Paulo, but cheesemonger, chefs, specialized press, everybody using social media. We raised awareness. I received on my Instagram 10 or 20 messages mentioning the governor of São Paulo because they closed a small producer, and they called it was it raised awareness. I believe it. I can say that, and the public
Yes.
authorities took notice. They called the inspector, invited the association for discussion, and after a lot of pressure, São Paulo became the first state in Brazil to have a specific regulation for inspecting artisanal products. Was a giant step forward, and we hope other states will follow the same path.
Falco, if I may, part of that legislation is they are training a special group of inspectors in how to inspect
Yes.
artisan cheese.
Yes.
And
That
I
is
don't
it.
know if this taking place any place except maybe in France. It's a really big step.
Yes. And I'll talk about Santa Catarina, Minas Gerais, and Rio Grande do Sul. There are 3 different states in Brazil. These states, they are known for traditional cheese, but now they are also seeing a creative, innovative cheeses. In Santa Catarina, there's a producer make cheese wrapped in oak strips, inspired by Vacheron Mondor, and there are also producers creating other entire original cheese, like mixing cow milk and sheep milk and the same cheese and things like this. Minas Gerais is seeing innovation too. They are making high quality, inventive cheeses in places that they are not traditional regions, like Governador Valadares. And as I mentioned, Brazilian cheese have been made for hundreds of years, but the real push into the market has only been happening in the last 15 or 20 years. People starting to look for this cheese, consumers, clients, my clients here, and companies became more organized, association appeared, and laws has changed. We know we how far we've come, but we also know how far we are from where we went to go. So that is it, my part. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing all these stories. We have time for questions. Any questions from the audience? I have a few.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Felice.
Hi. I'm wondering, with the 2 certifications on the artisanal that's available for the artisanal cheese, which one contributes to more value at the wholesale retail level and for the cheesemaker? Is there one that makes the cheese more valuable, or, essentially more expensive for the consumer, one certification over the other?
Dan, can you answer?
Yeah, I can answer that. Again, the answer is always it depends. The difference is that what they've done, because it's very new, has given them access to the national market. With these seals, they can sell in the national market. Now, if you're an industrial producer, that would be wonderful. But if you're a person who makes at the most 50 cheeses per day, it's a knife with 2 blades in a way. And so they have to take advantage of this as a group. So in essence, it's so new, we don't know what the effect will be yet. What it is now is that without it, you're not going to sell. And you're only going to sell to people who are selling illegally. With them, the advantage of the artisan is that it's a simplified process. So therefore, the production of the cheese is less onerous. And we're hoping that the pasteurized cheesemakers will organize and start to demand something similar for them, instead of being lumped in with other products like meat, which don't carry bacteria the same way that milk carries bacteria inside the stomach of the mammary glands of a living animal, and therefore already has bacterial protection built in. But these are, like next steps. The real battle now is to professionalize the inspection in the municipalities so they can actually give the seal. So it's a very good question, Felice. We don't want to see the prices driven up. And unfortunately, believe it or not, with the war in Ukraine, because Brazil bought so much of their insumos, their fertilizers, right, from Russia and the Ukraine, that the price of milk has gone through the roof in Brazil, and that affects the small farmers too, and it affects consumers, it affects everyone. So that's why, for these, in a more complete picture, that's why it's too soon to tell. I suspect that there will be people who take advantage of it, but I don't know how much they can take advantage when they have such small production. You know?
Then I have a question. In Brazil, we have 3 different levels of government. And because of this, we have 3 different seals. We have in municipality a seal that the producer just can sell their cheese in the municipality. And what this kind of seal that Dan said before, it with the artisanal seal, if you have the municipality approvals, you can sell in all the country. And my question is, something like that happens in the United States or in Mexico? Do you know?
Well, in Mexico, we don't have like rules
Could you
that-
understand my question?
Yeah. It sounds like a unique situation. So, and then the difference in the US is we have seals and we have certifications. And so a certification would be like a federal standard that's certified, whereas a seal is more of a more leans towards a marketing claim that is valuable, but not as valuable.
I forgot that. No, these are certifications. These are not
Okay.
seals in that sense.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Thank
the
you.
federal controls, you see, in using the example of Cerro, Cerro was the seat of the empire because that's where the gold was when the Portuguese were here. And so every single piece of cheese was written down in a book. They can go back to every piece of cheese that was made during the colonial era, and it has a number. And there are people who have to do that. And these are the bureaucrats, right? Canastro was like the Wild West. It was the stopping off point. So they got away with murder. Nobody paid any attention to them because the crown wasn't paying attention that much. That's why you could see it in the people. It's very interesting. But there is that mentality of federal control that really was at one time the king's control, that so much money from everything you do has to go back to Portugal. And there's a joke in Brazil that Cabral, who found Brazil, left after only 8 months, and it happens to be true. And they say because so the Brazilians have always been searching for a father, and the reason for that is because a lot of the early colonists didn't come here to create a country like they did in the United States or in other countries. They came here to send all the riches back to Portugal, get rich, and go back to Portugal. And most of them, unfortunately, were not the most educated. In fact, in the south of Brazil, I found out that they brought the slaves in from Africa because they knew how to read and write in the south, and they could be the clerks for them. So it's a very different and very complicated Portuguese history. And remembering also the first emperor of Brazil, right, who was the son of the emperor of Portugal, who was the one who freed the slaves, right? After he finally created the republic, the first thing the republic did was vote that he had to leave the country. So it's you could see there's things that happen here that are almost Kafkaesque, almost like a story in Kafka in relation to, but at the same time, because it's underdeveloped, it leaves a lot of freedom. So municipal can control municipal, state can control state, but anything federal which isn't that different. But the definitions, the rules, the regulations all come down from on high. These are defined by the people in Brasilia. And for many years, the only people who could inspect cheese factories were veterinarians. Because at the time they put the laws together, only veterinarians had the training to do it. But there's been some big legal battles because people who study longer than veterinarians study to get a doctoral degree in food science and technology should have the right to be able to inspect a food plant, right? So these things are still going on. It's a work in progress. So I hope that gives you an idea of, you know,
And how about the age of cheesemakers? Like, do you have an idea of an average age?
No,
Yeah.
I believe we have, like Don said before, we are in a revolution moment. There is a moment that just old people who are making cheese. But nowadays the cheese are not so cheap anymore. So it's not very rare. We see okay, the 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 son of Irene that I mentioned before, he and his wife came back to the production. So they were working in city and now they came from Diamante to produce cheese. But when I began in 20, I remember a story of Juninho Dunn in Cerro.
Yeah.
It's a producer, and he told me, Falco, when I went with my father into the bank, I was ashamed of him because nobody um, valorizava them. Nobody
Like,
her
gave
job
him value for his
uh,
job?
for his job. So he said, I was embarrassed to go with my father to the bank. Nowadays, I go with my son, and he's proud because his father is a cheese producer and got medal in contests. So it's not so everything is happy now, no, but it's a work in progress. But we are
Oh,
seeing something in São Paulo or in Bahia, it's another state, or in Santa Catarina, Paraná, we are seeing young people making cheese, and they are with a lot of energy to produce different recipes, and it's amazing. I was in Cuiabá last month. It's the capital of Mato Grosso, near from Pantanal. It was very hot and with a lot of smoke because of the queimadas. Como se chama? The
fires, the fires.
fires. Very sad. But it was the first contest of the state, and there's a lot of young producers. And most important, when one of them win a medal, everybody come together to celebrate. I said, oh my God, when
Yeah.
people are just celebrating your own victory, it's not so good. But everyone was celebrating the victory.
Yeah.
So I said, oh my God, there's some hope here.
Falco, Paulina had a question here about industrial cheese in Brazil too. And so I'll start with a little bit and then you can finish it up because after all, you sell it, so you're more familiar with the players. But everything that you see that kind of takes place with small producer in a way does affect the larger producers in the sense that it's a very bureaucratic country. And there is an attitude on a lot of the part of the dairies, it was for a very long time, of, you know, the word in Portuguese is explorar. I forget what the word is, but the idea is to take advantage of what's there to maximize your profits. And so you had a lot of scandals in the South, for instance, with people adulterating milk. Exploit. Thank you, Susan. Exploit. And they were putting, in some cases, they were putting some really bad things in the milk, and by getting milk that was poor quality and that really should have been rejected, the bacterial quality, and then faking the papers for and paying a little bribe to this. Is scandals like this happened, particularly in the South. So, but things changed in that, and they were very much against artisan cheese in the beginning because they want milk, and there's a shortage of milk, right? So, and the price of milk is going up. So, and it's not true of all producers, but they started looking at some of the larger producers at production of cheese. Now, when I came here 20 years ago, I went to one of the largest cheese producers. And I said, look, you have no specialty cheeses in Brazil. Okay, you have catupiry, which is kind of a fake white thing that, like brie, you take the white mold off of. And forgive me, all my Brazilian friends, it's not really that good. But that was the only thing. So I said, why don't you make some specialty cheeses? Because you could create a whole market, and you have these people are coming up now, and we've seen that I was right because what's happened with artisan cheese. And their answer was, well, we're not really interested in that, but can you find someone to show us how to put more starch and water into our cheese? So, and vegetable oil, that's the other thing they wanted to know. So, that was the attitude, but that was the attitude of industry overall. They were very competitive in a world that's very closed because they didn't negotiate well into exporting to the United States. They're very limited in where they could sell. So they were looking to cut costs. They had that mentality. That's changed. In fact, we were involved in a project with a big cheese producer, and that producer that I went with is actually supporting some artisan cheesemakers and bringing them to market. They've made a kind of a partnership, and they're starting to make better, more specialty style cheese. So, but the biggest problem they're all having from talking to the people all over is the problem of the price of milk and the quantity of milk available. The larger producers are using all the milk. So the medium-sized producers, which would be like most of the producers in Wisconsin, in comparison, are in dubious financial situation because of that. Now it can change, but that's the way it is right now. Falco, you want to add anything to that?
Yes. As I said before, I work with cheese for 28 years, and I work with artisanal cheese for 12 years. I'm not sure. I'm terrible with dates, but what happens is in Brazil, we consume, we eat 5 kilos of cheese per year. It's not a big consumption. So I have a friend producer. He said, Falco, our enemy, it's not the industry. Our enemy is people who is not eating cheese. And it's so smart. It's true. And when I sell artisanal cheese for the first time, it was the cheese from Guilherme Ferreira from Canastra. The instruction that I told to my employees here was, when the clients come here, you take note of the pedidos, the request, I don't know. So when they finish, you offer him as a piece of canastra cheese. Do you know it? So offering one by one, in 2018, for the first time, Galeria do Queijo, my store, sold more artisanal cheese than industrial cheese, special industrial cheese. Queijo fino, I don't know the name in English.
Like
but the question is,
or specialty cheese, I guess.
Specialty cheese. Thank you,
Yes.
Carmen. But the question is, how much we lost in sales of industrial cheese? How much? None. None. Because I believe we grow, we offer other opportunities to our consumers. People who is opening their minds to different cheeses. It's not open their mind just to artisanal cheese. They open their mind to different cheeses. And industry has different cheese. Because in Brazil, we consume a lot of fresh cheese and mozzarella cheese and cheese like very simple cheese, in fact. I'm not talking they are bad cheese, no, but we have a lot to grow with specialty cheese.
Specialty.
Specialty cheese. Thank you, Dan. So if I had an industry, a big industry of cheese, I would like to work with these people. I would like to support them, to create, and it happens. The industry is is seeing what's happened. I was done. Me and Michelle worked for a big company, industrial cheese, and now, just now, I finished a proposal. I don't know how to say it, to an industrial,
Right.
another industrial, a big one. They want me to talk about artisanal cheese, to talk about different flavors, and I believe it, of course, will be some kind of disputa, some kind
Yeah,
of
dispute. No, that's the same in
dispute.
English.
But
Mhm.
if they were smart, we will work together.
And some of them are smart. I mean, some of them are smart. And we have to remember also that the French are here. New Zealand was here for a while, but they finally gave up because it was too difficult to do what they needed to do to create milk at a low price with the laws that we have here. But the French are, the way the French entered the United States, they're spending those kinds of millions of dollars in promotion of French cheeses here, which when I ran Andronico supermarkets in Berkeley was great for American cheese. Because if people are starting to get that cheese, the artisanal cheeses are even better. We just have to jump on board with them, right? So, we help them. They're our friends. And I think that that is what's starting to happen here. We're seeing more of a focus on quality and less on a focus on doing it at lower cost. And so I think that's an improvement. And we're also discovering companies that nobody knew existed, right? There have been some very good little companies, like medium-sized, in like the size of most of the cheese makers in Wisconsin, that no one knew existed. What's this name? Deborah, who's in the Association of Cheesemongers. Her parents have a Pauzy, or what's the name of the cheese they make? It's a medium-sized cheese company that makes world-class cheese, and nobody knew they were there. So that's part of it too. It's all learning as things go on because it's a big country. And but the one thing Brazil does not do well with is export and import too, because of the taxes that are involved. The government takes a heavy load on those types of commodities, so it makes it very difficult. And they didn't negotiate well, or actually they didn't pay any attention to the negotiation for lower duty, the license negotiations that like Argentina does to get cheeses in the United States at cheaper prices. So it's in movement. It's changing, right? And it's changing faster than we thought it could, to be honest. Does that answer your question?
Yes, 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 yes. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank
Oh,
you.
no problem. No problem.
And Susan has a comment saying Falco has a good model of offering samples to entice purchases. Yeah.
Yeah, tell me about it. Well, when you all come down to visit, you'll just have to sample some of the cheeses at his store. I'm telling you, I don't know. Look it up online, the Gallery of Cheese. It is one of the most beautiful cheese stores in the world. It's
Oh,
really
that's so,
remarkable.
yeah.
And it's in the middle of a shopping center for Japanese Brazilians that sells mostly produce. So it's a really interesting place he's made, Falco and his wife Marcia.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I know it's very late for you. It might be around like, I don't know, 9, 10 p.m. or something. So
9:18, yeah.
9, yeah. I truly appreciate your time and sharing those stories. These are inspiring stories. And we just confirm that, like dairy is part of our cultures, is part of who we are, is part of a family, is part of heritage. And this is inspiring. Just thank you so much for sharing the stories. I
Yeah.
do appreciate that, and for making time to share with us. As I
Mhm.
said, our webinar will be posted on our website, dairypcc.com. I'll send the link whenever it's there. And I just want to say thank you again
Thank you very much.
for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you
so
very
much.
much.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Dan. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Falco.
Bye.
Falco,
Carmen.
você falou inglês perfeitamente. Oh, meu Deus. Eu vou precisar estudar ainda mais português.
Okay, thank you, Dan. See you.
The people who
Thank
speak
Bye.
Spanish know exactly what I said. Correct? Yes. Okay, very
Thank
good.
you. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Goodbye. Thank
Bye
you.
bye. Thank you, Carmen. Bye bye.
Bye.
Big
Carmen.
hugs. Ciao.
Mm.